Hey everyone, it's that time of year again. The leaves have changed, it's getting a bit chilly, and it's time to apply for financial aid. My name is Casey Woods. I'm Associate Director of Financial Aid, and I'm going to go over the basic two applications for financial aid, the FAFSA and the CSS Profile, and just some basic tips and how to complete it. Just trying to make it a pain-free, simple process that you are not worried about completing. It is something that I know many families, especially if you've never done it before, are stressed about and maybe think it's a bit daunting, but I promise you it's not that bad. If you set some time aside, 1 or 2 hours, it is something that you can get done as long as you're prepared and know what to expect going into it. So let's get started. The first thing first is you want to make sure you get all your documents together. So you want to make sure that before you go to FAFSA or the CSS Profile, is that you get the documents that you need to complete these. So that way, once you do start them, you're not running around trying to scramble and go through filing cabinets or whatever, trying to find this information or websites. So the things that you're going to need for the FAFSA, you're going to need social security numbers for you and your parent. If you're a dependent student, you're going to need parent information for all of this. So you need social security numbers, alien registration number if you're not a U.S. citizen, and then any documentation of any income that was earned, whether it's taxed or untaxed. So you'll need documentation from W-2s or any other untaxed income that you may have received, but then also tax returns, 1040s, or if it's from a U.S. territory or foreign tax return, you're going to need that information. And you'll need any kind of also source of assets as well that are not retirement. So you'll want to gather bank statements or record of investments. This will also include your primary home documentation because you'll need that for the CSS profile. So just go ahead and gather all that up and set aside some time. Like I said, you can set aside some time with the family, 1 or 2 hours, make it a thing, make it a tradition. It sounds a bit weird and cheesy, but have like a once a year, cuddle up next to the fireplace with some hot cocoa, put some tunes on, and do the FAFSA and the CSS profile. Make it a fun event that it's not something that you're dreading doing and putting off as long as it's possible. So once you get those together, we'll go into actually to see what you would see now on the FAFSA. So first, this is the website for FAFSA. It's studentaid.gov. And it'll show the process here for getting started new to the FAFSA process, start here, or if you're a returning user, log in. And then when you do this, you'll create an FSA ID. An FSA ID, you'll use it for the most part once a year, maybe a couple times more. But that means you should write it down because I can't even count how many times I've forgotten my FSA ID and password. And every time that you forget your password, you have to create a new one. You cannot reuse old ones ever. So I'm on my 7th or 8th password at this point. So you just to avoid that, make sure you write it down because sometimes after a year of not using it, you'll forget. It makes you use weird characters and things that may not be the same as all your old other passwords. So write it down. And then once you do log in, you're going to see, you'll go through a few little questions, like if you're a student or parent, and then it'll ask you a disclaimer. But then once you actually get in, it'll show that there's no FAFSA on file for you. And make sure you're on the 21-22 academic year. That's next year, that's upcoming. And just what I mentioned, you're getting all the tax information for the 21-22 academic year. It uses tax information from 2019, which may seem a bit weird, but at the same time, no one has 2020 tax information at this time. 2020 is not over. Taxes aren't due until April, so you can't complete the FAFSA or CSS profile with that information. So they've gone to using basically 2 years prior of the academic year of information. So what you're going to need when you get the taxes and income information and all that is looking at 2019 information. In terms of your assets, like the cash and investments, that'll be current information. So it's whatever it's currently valued at is what you're going to look at. But in terms of income, you're going to look at all 2019 information. So also to keep in mind, a lot has changed since 2019. We know that, right now there's a global pandemic going on, if that wasn't apparent to any of you. It's really just ravaged a lot of families. It's awful how much families are being affected by COVID, and it's something that we are very, very sensitive to. We will help as much as we possibly can. But when you first initially do the FAFSA, still fill out with your 2019 information. But the financial aid office obviously does know that things have changed for a lot of families. So complete it with the 2019 information, and then you'll contact the financial aid office to let us know of any changes that may have happened. You'll write a letter and just explain the situation of anything that may have occurred, loss of job, someone got sick and couldn't work for a while, furlough, heaven forbid a death in the family, anything like that you'd want to let us know of. But you'd still, when you're still sitting down to do the FAFSA, you'd still put the 2019 information and don't think, oh, well, this isn't representative. I need to put in my, new information because that's more representative of what I can pay because I no longer have that job. Don't do that. Still put in the old information and then contact the financial aid office. Okay, so getting started. There's a few things, like it actually is very simple. Once you get this far and a few more tips, it's a simple, straightforward process where you just follow what it's asking for. It'll tell you exactly what it needs, and you have all the documents in front of you, and you just complete it. But let's start from new, and it'll basically process, and then you have to create a save key. This allows you to come back if there's ever any issues you can't complete it that same day. You can come back and complete it at another time. So let's create a save key. And it's slow. Here we go. It gives you a little bit of tips at the beginning. And so if it needs help, it goes over the help, which I'm going to go over. It goes to the different areas of the FAFSA. How long will it take to complete? This is less than an hour. Can you save? And this, as I said, you can save it and come back to it later. And then the documents, it has a checklist, which I went over. The same exact ones I just went over of what you need, what documents you need. So if for some reason you don't have them now, you would look there and come back after you have those. So when you get started, this is a made up test one. So this is not a real social security number. But this is where you start putting student demographics, and it'll ask for school information. It'll ask for some questions about the student, age, and other information, which would determine if they're dependent or independent. It'll ask for parent demographic information. Then it'll start asking for financials for the parent and the student if it needs the parent. But for sure, it'll ask for the student information. You'll sign and submit. That's really all it is. So as long as you have those documentation, it'll be very painless. But there are some questions and there are some things that just cause questions because not everyone has super simple situations. Like for example, even starting at something as simple as a first name, this can be a confusing question for people. What if you go by a nickname? What if you have multiple first names? What if the name that you just go by is different from the name on your birth certificate or social security card? There's a lot of different reasons why someone may be confused on here. So what do? So you click on this question mark circle. This is a help circle. Every single question on the FAFSA has one of these, every single one. And it clears up maybe, for the most part, any questions that you would have about that question. So for example, first name, it says to enter your first name exactly as it appears on your social security card. So that would be very clear of what you need to do. But for some reason, you're not happy with the names on your social security card. It even goes further. It says that for assistance with updating the information on your social security card, call the Social Security Administration with this number or visit the Social Security Administration website. And also it goes into detail about what is a valid input for this area. So that's a very, very important thing for all these questions on the FAFSA. No matter how confusing they may get or how unsure of the question you may be, it's always going to have a help bubble. So there'll be questions about income or different areas on the taxes that just may be confusing. You aren't sure of what to enter, and you'll just click that question mark. It'll help explain exactly where you should get that information or what you should put in, what's eligible, what's not eligible to put in there. It'll really, really clear things up. So that's really the main few steps to completing the FAFSA. The other big thing is as you go through this, there's going to be an IRS data retrieval tool option, which lets you pull your tax information directly off your taxes from 2019. If it gives you that option, there's reasons if there's been a change since 2019, then marital status, or if you filed married but separate tax returns, things like that. then it won't let you use that tool. But if it does give you the option to use the data retrieval tool, definitely use it for a few reasons. One, it allows you to save time. It also helps the school because we know that information is accurate straight off the taxes. But also it helps you because there is a thing called federal verification. Every so many students get pulled randomly for federal verification, and if we do not have the information from the FAFSA IRS data retrieval tool, we have to get the tax transcript or tax returns from the family, and it becomes a much more burdensome process. Basically, the verification is that it's just a federal requirement that we have to verify the information on a random number, a random selection of students. We don't get to pick that random selection. FAFSA just tells us if the students pulled for verification or not, and then we have to verify the information by getting the taxes or tax transcripts. But if you do the IRS data retrieval tool, we don't have to gather those documents. It's already verified off of the IRS site. So if that is an option, definitely do it. Use the help bubbles, and then never pay for FAFSA. The very first letter in FAFSA stands for free. So don't ever pay anyone to do it. It's straightforward. Like I said, you're going to go, as long as you have those documents ahead of time and you utilize the help bubbles, you're not going to have a problem submitting the rest of FAFSA. I'm not going to go through it question by question because that's what the bubbles are for, and they are very, very helpful. And it's just, for time, it's not worth going through every single question at this time. But even if for some reason the bubbles aren't enough, definitely call FAFSA's call them, or you can call the Syracuse Financial Aid Office, and we're more than happy to help with any kind of questions if you're unsure what to put on the FAFSA for something if the help bubble's not enough. So that's the FAFSA. Just to recap a couple things, and I know I've recapped now a few times on some of these things, but just to go back over them, make sure you write down your FSA ID and password, because it's one time a year and it's easy to forget after a year of not using it. Use the help circles. I've said that like 20 times, but it's just really important because of how helpful they are with this process. They really make it much less scary process that if you may mess something up or put something in incorrectly. Use the data retrieval tool available, and never pay someone to do it for you. And if you're on a website that's trying to make you pay, you're on the wrong website. So studentaid.gov. And then it's the CSS profile. So you may have never even heard of the CSS profile. So you're gonna say, what's the difference, Casey? What's the difference between the CSS profile and FAFSA? So FAFSA is the federal application for student aid. So this is where you would get Pell Grant, SEOG, work study, federal loans. Those are all different types of federal financial aid. And the FAFSA determines, using the federal methodology, how much financial aid you're eligible for federal aid. But then some schools like Syracuse also provide, on top of that, their own set of money, their own amount of financial aid. And we have our own process of determining what families are eligible for. So Syracuse, we actually provide 100% of determined needs. So what that means is we have a cost of attendance at our school, of an estimated cost of attendance for how much it costs to go here. And then we look at the FAFSA and the CSS profile. So for our money, we look at the CSS profile and determine, based upon the information you enter, determine how much the family is able to afford to pay for college in 1 year. And we subtract that from the cost of attendance. And that gives us the amount the family's the amount that's left over is how much the family needs to meet the rest of the cost of attendance. So for example, say $75,000 to go for a cost of attendance is the sticker price, but your family can only afford $40,000 based upon the information on FAFSA. That means the family would need $75,000 minus 40,000, sorry, would be $35,000 in financial aid that your family would need. And Syracuse would provide 100% of that, which would, first, you get the federal aid and any state aid you'd be eligible for, but on top of that, on top of any federal state aid that you receive, whatever amount that's left over of that $35,000, we provide a Syracuse grant. So we use the CSS profile to determine that amount, to determine how much the family can afford to give us the need of the family. on how much the financial aid they're eligible for. And this is a few things that are different with it. It asks for very similar information with taxes and assets, but it will ask for a few other things like home equity, some other questions on here that will go a bit more detail that will help us with the process to use our calculations. So just have a lot of the same documents gathered. The only other extra one would be some home equity and home mortgage information, so we can determine the home value if that's applicable to your family. But once you start that process, it's the same thing. You go to this website. It's cssprofile.collegeboard.org up here. And then you would sign in. So I'm signed in for auto orange, but you would sign in again, make sure it's 2021 to 2022. It makes me sign in. So I started an application already, but if this wasn't started, it would have a start a new application. Then you just enter this information again. But for this one, every time you go to a new box, the help area populates over here in this little yellow box. So every single time you click a new one, these are all the different names I've entered before, but you go for preferred name. It has, if you put email, but if you like for student CV Fin Aid ID, like what is that? It says if you have one from last year, receive one in an email, enter it here. If you don't have one, leave this blank. So that's something that will probably be confusing for a lot of people. And as you go through all the different areas here, if like, do you have legal dependents? If you aren't sure, okay, select yes only if the student has children for whom the student provides most of their support, or the student provides at most of the support for people who live with the student and will continue to provide for this level during the academic year. So just make sure it's just basically the same as those little help bubbles that you're utilizing that. Then with the CSS profile, there is a fee. It is $25 for the first school you send it to. And then after that, it's $16 for every other school you send it to after that. There is a fee waiver process that you would be notified at the end if you're automatically eligible based upon some income requirements. But for the most part, most people are going to be paying the $25 to $16 because it's not through the government. So just do note that. Otherwise, there's not too much more difference between the FAFSA and CSS profile. That's why you want to do them the same day, sit down, make time to do both. To go through the FAFSA, you're going to go through the CSS profile. It'll be a little bit different questions, but for the most part, you're going to be doing the same thing. So that's really helpful to do it at the same time. So if you had questions on one, you'd be ready to do it for the next one and maybe not have to look up things again the second time. And it's just really important to note that once you do submit these again, any changes to the family's financial situation due to COVID or not due to COVID even, just any change to the family's financial situation that affects the family's ability to pay for college, contact the financial aid office as early as possible and let them know of those changes so we can start potentially looking at using not from 2019, but looking at 2020 or even 2021 eventually income information. So that way it's a bit more accurate of what the family can actually afford. Then once you submit both of these documents, Syracuse will start asking for other documents. So you want to make sure you're continuing to check your MySlice account. There's a financial aid to-do list in your MySlice once you've applied. And that will show any kind of documents that we are still requesting. So we may have to ask for specific tax documents or a form that shows asset information. Anything that we may need more clarification on or need verification for, we'll ask for, and it'll be in the MySlice financial aid to-do list. So make sure you're on top of that, because the sooner you get those in, the sooner we can review them. And if we need any more information, we would ask for it. And just make sure that you're not, don't just submit the FAFSA and CSS profile, then never look at it again and think that it's all going to take care of itself, because there are some other things we may need. And then with the special circumstances, in terms of if there's been a change in family circumstance, and also with submitting documents, the reason it's important to do it early is because if you wait to do that until you see if you're admitted to Syracuse, those admission letters come out, and now you say, okay, now I need to finish financial aid because I know I'm admitted. It backs us up against a very tight deadline where you need to make your college decision by May 1st, but you're not just now submitting financial aid information that's going to affect your financial aid. You're either receiving your first initial financial aid package or an updated one with the circumstances that have changed since 2019. And if the financial aid package isn't completed by May 1st, or that the update based upon the differences from 2019 aren't there, you're going to be trying to make a college decision without all the information at your fingertips to make a apples to apples decision, because you'll have some schools where maybe it's a final decision and some other schools where maybe we're still waiting on financial aid and you don't have all the, you don't know exactly how much school's going to cost in the end. So just make sure you kind of work on these as soon as possible. If you have a lot of schools, maybe make a spreadsheet, things like that are really helpful to kind of keep organized and make sure you're on top of all the different schools you're applying to, including Syracuse. But like I said, we're here to help. Reach out to us for any kind of anything that changes, any questions you have if you're not sure of something. If you have any questions on the FAFSA CSS profile or any other documents that we may request, don't hesitate to contact us. We're available by phone or by, we have virtual appointments now through Zoom. Go to our Syracuse Financial Aid website. There's a contact us page there, but don't be afraid to contact us for anything you might have. But that's it. So thank you for taking the time to listen to this. I hope it was helpful. I hope that you aren't too worried about completing the FAFSA and that you take some time to do, some time to set some time aside to complete it. I promise you it's really not that bad. It really is straightforward. You don't need anyone to help you. If you have the documents in front of you, you can do it yourself and be totally confident in what you do. Just utilize the help questions there. Call the financial aid office if you need anything or need any help. With those Zoom calls, you can even share your screen, or we can share the screen and really make sure that we're helping as the best that we can. So again, thanks for the time that you took to listen to this. I hope that we hear from you. I hope that we see you as soon as it's safe, and continue to stay safe. Thanks.